The day after Amelia announced her engagement, her assistant handed me a plane ticket. He told me to leave City G and to never come back. If I did, he said, Amelia had plenty of ways to ruin my life. For the past 3 years, everyone had looked at us as an enviable couple, living a life of luxury and ease. But my departure was a moment of profound embarrassment, a joke that only I wasn't laughing at. I accepted the terms without a fight. That very night, the plane I was on plummeted from an altitude of 10,000 meters and crashed. I never imagined I would die like this. My plan had been simple. Take the $30 million Amelia was giving me as a severance package and start a new life overseas, far away from all the complicated drama. I had envisioned a future filled with peaceful days stretching out before me, a lifetime of them. But in that terrifying moment, as the aircraft fell from the sky, all of those plans, all of that potential, vanished into nothing. A wave of pure, helpless anger washed over me. The ticket Amelia had given me wasn't a ticket to a better life. It was a one-way trip to my death. My mind suddenly flashed back to our last meeting. We hadn't seen or spoken to each other in over 2 months. She had been completely preoccupied with managing her fiancé, Julian's divorce, and sorting out the custody arrangements for his son. After all that time, she finally seemed to remember that she still technically had a boyfriend, so she spared an hour to come see me at my apartment. Of course, it wasn't really my place. It was a luxury condo in the most exclusive part of City G, a place where the land itself was worth its weight in gold. Without Amelia, I could never have dreamed of even stepping foot inside a building like that. Not so long ago, we had been inseparable, lying in bed together with her arms wrapped around my waist as I playfully traced patterns on her back. But after just a short time apart, the distance between us felt immense and unbridgeable. We sat at opposite ends of a long dining table, the physical space between us mirroring the emotional chasm that had opened up. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice devoid of warmth, getting straight to the point. I didn't bother with pretenses either. "30 million, I said, "for 3 years of my youth." Of course, I had to admit to myself that I had loved her once, but all of that affection had evaporated the instant I realized I was nothing more than a substitute for another man. She simply nodded, her expression cold and unreadable. "Fine," she agreed, "but you can't stay in City G anymore. He doesn't like you being here." What choice did I have? I had to agree. Even if I had refused, I knew Amelia had the power and resources to make me disappear one way or another, and it would have been far more humiliating than leaving on my own terms. She then mentioned a foreign country, a place where she owned property. "I have a few houses there," she said with a casual generosity that stung. "Pick whichever one you like. It's yours." I managed a hollow laugh. "Okay." She gave a slight nod. "Can you manage to never see me again?" she asked, her tone making it clear that my very presence was a source of irritation for her and her new fiancé. "Of course," I replied. I was an orphan who had struggled just to get through college. 3 years ago, I came to City G after hearing it was a land of opportunity. I found some work as a model, a job I genuinely enjoyed, but it wasn't long before I met Amelia. She pursued me relentlessly for 2 weeks, and we started dating. She didn't like me being in the public eye, so I gradually shrank my social circle until she was the only one in it. Over the years, every person I knew was a friend of hers, not mine. I had no real attachments here, no roots to pull up. I couldn't wait to leave and never look back. But things didn't go according to my plan. I died. And yet somehow, I met Amelia again. The only problem was that she couldn't see me, because I was now just a spirit. I had always been particular about my appearance. Before boarding that fateful flight, I had gone to a stylist to get a sharp haircut and put on my best clothes. I hadn't taken such care with my grooming in years, mostly because Amelia hadn't liked it. I was so naive back then, doing everything I could to please her. It was only later that I learned the truth. She disliked it because a sharp suit and a crew cut made me look almost identical to Julian, the famous movie star. Perhaps heaven had taken some pity on me, because as a ghost, I still looked exactly as I did before I died, with no signs of the violent crash. I was standing in Amelia's office, and after taking a moment to examine my reflection in a large mirror and sighing in relief, I looked around the familiar room. So many memories, all of them now painful to recall. Finally, my gaze settled on Amelia herself. She was only 27, but already possessed immense power and wealth. The biggest setback in her life had been watching the man she loved marry someone else. But now, it seemed everything was finally falling into place for her. Even her assistant, David, wore a genuine smile as he entered the office. "Everything is ready in the nursery, Amelia," he said. "The clothes and accessories that Julian liked yesterday have all been delivered." Amelia nodded softly, putting down the contract she was reviewing. She rubbed her forehead and picked up her phone, staring at the screen for a long time. I floated closer, curious to see what she was looking at, but she turned the screen off before I could get a good look. "How is he now?" she asked David. Her assistant paused for a second before answering quickly. "Julian is filming on a set not far from here. Would you like to visit him later?" I had seen the drama Julian was currently starring in. He played a deposed king, a character who was both handsome and wise, full of love and hate. In the show, he used his cunning and strategic mind to reclaim his kingdom. If I were just a normal viewer, I probably would have been a fan too. Unfortunately, I wasn't. Our first and only meeting had been excruciatingly awkward. "You know, you look a lot like me," he had said with a smirk. I could only nod. "Yeah, a lot of people say that. I take it as a compliment." He just smiled mysteriously. "You've been with her for almost 3 years, right?" he asked. "Yes," I replied. He raised an eyebrow. "Funny thing is, 3 years ago she was trying to get with me." It was laughable, really. I had been with her for 3 years, and not a single person had ever told me I was a stand-in. I had played the part of the naive lover perfectly. I only learned later that the successful shows he starred in were all projects Amelia had carefully selected and funded for him. She couldn't stand to see him fail, so under her protection, Julian's career soared. As for me, I had accomplished nothing in those 3 years. I looked impressive, living a life of luxury, but I was only ever known as the guy with Amelia. After David spoke, Amelia remained silent for a long time, tapping a pen against her desk. A good while passed before she finally spoke again. "He should have arrived by now, right?" The question seemed to come out of nowhere, but David, accustomed to her ways, quickly understood. He checked his watch. Yes, he should have landed by now. I realized it at the same moment. She was asking about me. It was a small comfort to think she had at least a shred of conscience. Unfortunately for both of us, I never made it across the ocean. I had died the previous night. Amelia showed no visible reaction to David's confirmation. She just looked at her phone again. This time, I was standing right beside her, so I saw the screen clearly. It was open to our chat history. I saw that she had sent me a message just half an hour ago. "If you ever have any trouble, you can reach out to David." In the past, I would have never let her message go unanswered for more than a few minutes. Hearing David's response, Amelia let out a cold, humorless chuckle and leaned back in her chair. "Great. Has he contacted you?" David shook his head. "No. After I dropped off his plane ticket, we haven't seen each other." Amelia fell silent again, her face an emotionless mask. But the atmosphere in the room suddenly felt heavy, almost suffocating. David hesitated for a moment before offering, "Amelia, would you like me to call Leo?" She looked up at him, her gaze calm and inscrutable. It was impossible to tell what she was thinking. After a long moment, she said, "No need. Don't tell me anything about him anymore." After saying this, she glanced at our chat history one last time. Seeing no reply from my end, her thumb hovered over the screen for a moment before she decisively deleted my contact information. Watching her do that, I finally understood. She wasn't concerned about me at all. That last message wasn't an olive branch. It was just her way of tidying up loose ends before cutting me out of her life completely. I was so furious. Why did I have to be the one to die? My grand plan was to block her number and sever all ties the moment I landed and moved into the fancy villa she'd given me. The fact that she beat me to it felt like a pointless, petty victory for her. Overcome with frustration, I tried to kick her leg. Back when things were good between us, she never put on airs. I had a bit of a temper and would get cheeky, sometimes giving her a light kick if she upset me. It was a habit, an almost instinctive reaction. But it was different now. Back then, a kick would have made her yelp. Now my foot passed right through her without any sensation at all. I couldn't even touch her, which only made me angrier. After her assistant left, Amelia worked for a long time. During that period, I tried to leave the office, but every time I touched the doorknob, I was instantly transported back to her side. After a couple of attempts, I finally got the message. I couldn't stray far from her. It was probably because she was the one who had indirectly caused my death. It was a shame I didn't become some kind of vengeful spirit. Otherwise, I would have haunted her relentlessly. Just then, a voice echoed in my head. "Finally found you." I was startled. "Who are you?" I thought. "I'm from the Underworld Registry," the voice explained. "There was a glitch in our system. All of you who died in that plane crash are currently stuck in the mortal realm, bound to the person you were closest to in life." "Take me away then," I quickly replied. "And hey, I had a lot of money saved up. Can I use that in my next life? I really want to be rich." The Underworld official seemed hesitant. "I'm not entirely sure about that, but you died a pretty awful death this time, so maybe you'll get a more peaceful passing in your next life." "All right, fine. Just get me out of here. I need to reincarnate." "Not yet," the voice said. "You have to wait until your funeral is over." "Why?" "Because your spirit has formed a temporal bond with this world. After your funeral rites are completed, that bond will be severed. But from what I can see, the funerals for the other victims have already begun. You're in a pitiful situation. It doesn't seem like anyone even knows you're dead, let alone cares." Those words hit me like a physical blow. After delivering that painful truth, the voice faded from my mind. I sighed, running through the short list of people I knew, and had to confirm the grim reality. It looked like I was going to be a wandering ghost for a very, very long time. A great deal of time passed before Amelia finally got ready to leave for the day. Julian had called a few minutes earlier, asking her to come pick him up. I followed her downstairs and into the car. I didn't watch her. Instead, I gazed out the window at the bustling city. The towering skyscrapers and endless streams of traffic made the whole place feel like a vibrant, shimmering dream. I couldn't deny the pang of regret. I had died in the prime of my life, all because of a failed relationship. And that $30 million breakup fee? I hadn't even had the chance to spend a single dime. It was utterly ridiculous and profoundly unfair. I felt a ghostly lump form in my throat. When we arrived at the film set, Amelia got out of the car. A moment later, Julian emerged and wrapped her in a tight hug. I saw her stiffen for a fraction of a second before relaxing and offering him a soft smile. "How has it been? Are you tired?" Julian nodded, launching into a story about his day. He had a pleasant voice, capable of making even the most mundane topics sound interesting. Their fingers were interlocked, and they were both wearing identical engagement rings. Having spent years in a world adjacent to celebrities, I had seen countless famous couples, but I had to admit, looking at Amelia and Julian together, they really did look like they belonged with each other. Just then, two people came out of a nearby building, chatting amongst themselves. "Did you see the trending news last night?" one asked. "A plane crashed. Hundreds of people on board and not a single survivor." "I saw that," the other replied. "It's terrifying. I was supposed to fly abroad and had even booked a ticket on that exact flight. Luckily, I got a last-minute gig and had to cancel. I feel so fortunate." My spirits lifted instantly. Amelia was, at her core, a generous person. If she found out I was dead, she would surely arrange a proper funeral for me. And sure enough, her movements froze when she overheard their conversation. She turned slowly, letting go of Julian's hand, and walked over to the two speakers. With a composed expression, she asked, "The plane crash last night?" The two people nodded. Just as Amelia was about to ask for more details, Julian came over to her side, playfully chiding her. "Aren't you the one who's never interested in this kind of gossip? I'm starving. Let's go get something to eat." Julian had been standing further away and was wearing sunglasses, so the two hadn't recognized him. But when he spoke, they were stunned for a moment. Then their faces lit up with surprise and excitement. "Oh my God, you're Julian. And this must be your fiancé, right?" Julian's marriage to his ex-wife had been kept secret, but his relationship with Amelia was very public. Their engagement had been all over the news, with everyone calling them a perfect match. Unfortunately, this public narrative had also dragged me through the mud. The internet didn't care about the nuances of the situation. All that mattered was that Julian had met Amelia first, a fact their classmates could corroborate. In the court of public opinion, I was cast as the homewrecker, the villain who had interfered in their destined romance. During that time, I hadn't even dared to look at my phone. Julian smiled slightly and admitted confidently, "Yes, this is her." "Wow, she's so beautiful. You two are such a great match. When's the wedding?" one of them gushed. "Julian, we're filming right next door. We've been fans for so long, but never had the chance to meet you. Could we possibly get an autograph?" Julian graciously agreed. With the interruption, Amelia seemed to lose her train of thought and didn't press her questions any further. My hope was extinguished in that instant, but I wasn't surprised. I had learned long ago that in Amelia's heart, everything and everyone else came second to Julian. His moods, his needs, his desires, they all took priority. And true to form, while Julian was signing autographs, I watched her pull out her phone and make a call to her assistant, David, telling him to cancel their original dinner reservation and book a table at a restaurant much closer to the set. I sat through dinner with them and then followed them home. Throughout the evening, Amelia was incredibly patient and attentive to Julian. If I still had feelings for her, watching them together would have been torture, enough to make me want to cry my heart out. But I didn't love her anymore. I just felt numb. Sometimes I even wondered why this had happened to me. I had tried to be a good person my whole life and had never intentionally harmed anyone. So why did it seem like my death was a complete non-event, a fact no one even cared about? Entering the house, I saw that it had changed drastically. It looked nothing like the home I had shared with Amelia. The butler, Samuel, was coming down the stairs, holding the hand of a little boy who looked to be about 3 or 4 years old. The boy was dressed in a tiny suit, complete with a diamond bow tie, and had naturally curly hair and big, expressive eyes. He was incredibly cute. "Max, come here!" Julian called out. The little boy, Max, ran over and jumped into Julian's arms. Then he reached out and grabbed Amelia's hand. "Amelia, Amelia," he chirped. Amelia squatted down, gently stroking his hair. "Were you a good boy today?" she asked patiently. They looked like a picture-perfect family. Who would have ever thought that this powerful, commanding CEO would be willing to humble herself for love, even raising another woman's child? Max nodded vigorously. "Yes, I was good." At that moment, the doorbell rang, its sharp chime cutting through the domestic scene. Samuel went to answer it and returned a moment later holding a small package. He glanced at Julian, then hesitated before speaking. "This appears to be from Leo." A wave of forgotten memories washed over me. That's right. Before I left, I had sent Amelia a box. There were 2 things inside. The appearance of that box cast a sudden silence over the room, which was only broken when Max started to cry in Amelia's arms, pointing a small finger at the package in Samuel's hand. "Throw it away. That's bad uncle's stuff." His tantrum immediately made Julian look uneasy. He lowered his head and cooed softly to his son. Okay, whatever you want. Daddy will throw it away right now." He gave Samuel a meaningful look. Samuel hesitated, his eyes flicking toward Amelia. She was looking down, her gaze fixed on the box in Samuel's hand for a long moment. Finally, she spoke. "Throw it away." Samuel sighed, turned, and left the room. When he returned a few moments later, his hands were empty. Julian looked over at Amelia and said casually, "That substitute of yours is pretty persistent, isn't he?" I gritted my teeth and cursed silently. Yes, I am pretty persistent. I'm the bad uncle, the substitute. If they were so powerful, they should hire an exorcist to make me disappear for good. Amelia's face remained placid at Julian's words. She didn't argue. She just said, "Is that so?" Julian chuckled, then had Samuel take Max back upstairs to his room. He snuggled into Amelia's arms, his voice taking on a touch of sadness. "Max is so cute, isn't he? It would be great if he were really your son." I had seen Julian's ex-wife. She was a well-known businesswoman, mature and elegant. Julian's family wasn't wealthy, and he had been ambitious and strong-willed from a young age, like a character straight out of a romance novel. In his sophomore year of college, at the peak of his youth, he had met both Amelia and his ex-wife. Amelia was just a student then, keeping a low profile on campus. Julian liked her, but not as much as he cared about securing his future. His ex-wife, in an effort to win him over, invested in a television show just for him. By the time Amelia found out, they were already married. At the same time, Julian finally learned about Amelia's wealthy background. He naturally regretted his choice, but his pride kept him from contacting her. That is, until a few months ago, when he discovered his wife was cheating on him. That was when he sought out Amelia again, and that was the end of my beautiful, if naive, romance. Julian tilted his head. "You know, when my ex-wife had Max, it affected her health. The doctors say she probably can't have any more children." "I don't mind," Amelia interrupted him, her tone firm and determined. Julian sighed in relief, then glanced towards the door, his voice playful again. "You say that, but what if... if you had a child with that substitute, would you still send him away so easily?" Amelia frowned slightly. "I never speculate about things like that." "Oh, come on, just tell me what you think." "What else is there to think? I would definitely have you take care of the problem." Even though we were together, she did bring up the idea of marriage a few times. We had even designed matching rings and talked about having children someday. But all of that was just hypothetical nonsense. In reality, the moment Julian came back into the picture, she cast me aside without so much as a proper goodbye. She then stood by and watched with cold eyes as my life was dismantled, before paying me off to disappear. At that moment, Amelia was quiet for a second, then simply pushed Julian away. Her voice was cold, laced with an unfamiliar weariness. "Don't bring him up again." "But you two were together for so long," Julian pressed. "Haven't you thought about him at all these past couple of days?" Amelia pressed her lips together into a thin line, looking down at Julian coldly. "He's gone, isn't he? Isn't that enough?" Originally, Amelia had planned to send me away before she and Julian got engaged, but Julian wasn't satisfied with that. "On the day of our engagement, let's invite him too," he had said. "Even if the kid is young, he should witness this momentous day, right?" Because of that one statement, my departure was delayed by 2 weeks. At their engagement party, I sat in the audience and watched the entire ceremony. Funnily enough, Max was sitting right next to me. He smiled and sweetly asked me to pass him a meatball from the buffet. As I lifted my hand to get it for him, he suddenly tumbled off his chair and cut his arm on a piece of broken glass on the floor. He immediately started wailing, "Why did you push me?" Everyone turned to look at me with disgust, as if I were the lowest form of life. They thought I was a vile man, so desperate to climb the social ladder that I would resort to hurting a child. I hadn't even had time to process what happened before Amelia walked over and slapped me across the face. After the slap, I looked up and saw Julian staring at me with a smug, victorious expression. "Should have known better than to invite you," he said. Now, as a ghost listening to this conversation, I suddenly realized something. Whether I was innocent or guilty simply didn't matter to Amelia. Everything she did was calculated to make Julian happy. Julian pressed his lips together, then suddenly started unbuttoning Amelia's shirt, leaning in to kiss her. Amelia didn't refuse him, but she didn't embrace him either. Just then, her phone rang. Julian, looking annoyed, grabbed the phone and put it on speaker. From my corner of the room, I heard a man's voice ask, "Hello? Is this a contact of Mr. Leo?" Amelia's eyes flickered, and she was about to respond, but Julian quickly cut in. "I don't know him." He then blocked the number and turned off the phone. "I don't care. I finally get some time off today. Whatever it is, you need to stay with me." They went upstairs together. Luckily, the bond tethering me to her wasn't so tight that I couldn't move around the ground floor freely. So I stayed downstairs while they were gone. I was stuck with Amelia for quite a few days after that. The first day, they went to see a movie. It was an old film that Julian had picked out. Amelia was completely uninterested, busy texting her assistant, David. After he finished reporting on work matters, I saw the typing indicator appear on his end for a long time, but no message ever came through. Amelia furrowed her brow and typed, "Do you want to take a leave of absence?" David replied quickly. "Not at all, Amelia. Did you see the trending news?" Amelia typed back, "Julian is about to release a new movie, right? Remind me when it's out." I let out a small, silent laugh. David certainly knew how to navigate a conversation. The theater was packed. I squeezed in next to a random person and spent the time watching short videos and mini-series over their shoulder on their phone. I also saw the trending topics list. A day after the crash, the news was still the top story. It was right there, at the front of the list. If Amelia had just clicked on it, she would have seen everything. David had probably wanted to tell her about it, but Amelia had already given him a direct order not to bring up anything related to me. That's why he had worded his question so carefully. After she replied to David, Amelia looked up at the movie screen, seeming lost in thought for a long while. It was only then that she seemed to realize that this was my favorite movie. I had begged her to watch it with me a few times. As she watched now, I remembered how we used to get all hot and bothered on the couch while watching it, full of youthful energy and passion. After a while, Amelia suddenly stood up. Julian, who was hiding his face behind sunglasses and a hat, whispered, "What's wrong?" "I need to step out for a minute." She left the theater and the mall, ending up on a deserted street outside. She smoked an entire pack of cigarettes without even seeming to notice. The next day, Julian had to leave for filming, and Max came down with a fever. Amelia took him to the hospital herself. After finally getting Max to calm down and fall asleep, she stood by a window in a quiet corner of the hallway, staring out, lost in thought. A couple of nurses walked by, not noticing her as they chatted. "Remember that kid with the fever from a few days ago?" one said. "Yeah, it was pretty serious. Our head nurse even took charge of his case. But it was just a small cut, right? Why all the fuss?" "Who knows? Kids can be dramatic. But I remember there was a young man with them. The rumor going around was that he deliberately hurt the child." "I know who you mean. He looked pretty stylish. I remember him muttering about curses and a Rolls Royce. He was crying, and I even handed him a tissue. He was very polite, said thank you. He didn't seem like a bad person at all." "Yeah, that person was me. I had agreed to delay my departure and attend their engagement party in exchange for 2 Rolls Royces. I was dead broke at the time, and those 2 months of being ignored and shunned by Amelia had been rough. After she slapped me, I wanted to explode, but I bit back my anger, keeping the deal for the luxury cars in mind. Besides, I knew I had no real power to fight them." Standing aside, Amelia heard all of this and actually let out a small chuckle. But a moment later, her smile vanished as another nurse continued the conversation. "Now I remember. Before that incident, I saw him at the fertility center sorting out some paperwork." Amelia's expression became indescribable. Her lips parted slightly, her back seemed to hunch over, and her fingers clenched and unclenched at her sides, as if she were grappling with a thought she couldn't quite grasp. Just then, Max's voice called out, "Amelia," from inside the room. She went back in and stood by the bed, looking at the feverish little boy. She suddenly asked him, "That day, did that handsome uncle really push you?" Max was just a child, and he was feeling very sick. He stammered and hesitated for what felt like an eternity before finally giving up and admitting with a pout, "I fell by myself." That night, Amelia stood just outside the hospital room, staring at the sign for the fertility clinic across the hall for the entire night. As I watched her from behind, a flood of my own memories came back to me. We had once gone to that hospital together, to that very clinic, where we had left behind the biological seeds of a potential life, planning on pursuing IVF later on. If Amelia ever found out that I was planning to sneak away with all the completed paperwork for our embryo, she would have been furious. Honestly, it wasn't because I loved her anymore. It was because her genes were good. I had it all figured out. With the money she gave me, I could raise our child, and life would be a dream. At the crack of dawn, she finally moved, pulling out her phone and calling the director of the clinic. Once she hung up, her face was pale. She knew. She knew I had left with our embryo. She put her phone away and leaned her forehead against the cool glass of the window, letting out a single, sharp laugh. "Leo," she whispered, "you've got some nerve." 2 minutes later, I watched as she expertly keyed in a string of numbers. They were my numbers. Yet, strangely, she hesitated before pressing the call button. Several minutes passed. Eventually, she gave up and opened her messaging app, found my deleted contact, and sent a new friend request. I wasn't sure what she was thinking. Did she want the embryo back? A bitter thought crossed my mind. "There's no need to push so hard, Amelia. I'm dead." Oh, wait. And so is our future child, gone without a trace. That afternoon, Max was discharged from the hospital, but Amelia didn't go home. Nor did she go to the office. Instead, she drove to my old place. It was the house she had given me, and after we split up, she never mentioned it again. I had sold it without a second thought, and for a very good price, too. I had been thrilled about it for days. But now, I watched as she punched in the old security code and walked right through the front door. It turned out the apartment was still furnished, looking exactly as I had left it. The new owner was her all along. She had liked this place so much that she gave it to me, only to buy it back again. I couldn't begin to wrap my head around the logic of the rich. Amelia wandered through the rooms, then sat down on the sofa. A call came in. It was her assistant, David. "Amelia, I've just confirmed the photo shoot schedule for the day after tomorrow. If that's good with you, I'll let Julian know." Amelia was silent for a long time, not saying a word. I was feeling tired myself, and sat down on the other end of the couch. Then, suddenly, her gaze shifted, landing directly on the spot where I was sitting. I was startled, almost believing for a second that she could see me, but she just slowly looked away. "Cancel it," she said finally. "Huh? But I've checked your schedules. Both you and Julian are available. We could reschedule for next week, perhaps?" In the past few days, I had learned that their wedding was scheduled to take place in 2 months. "No," Amelia said, sighing. "I mean, cancel the photo shoot altogether?" I couldn't figure her out. After another pause, she spoke again. "Book me a flight. I'm leaving tonight." As she said this, it was as if something clicked into place for her. She leaned back, and a strange tenderness appeared in her eyes. "I need to find him. He left too soon. We have so much left unsaid. Do you think he'll blame me for how harsh I was?" Was she talking about me? I stared at her, dumbfounded. Amelia sighed and gripped her phone tightly. She rarely opened up to anyone like this. In fact, this was a first. She used to think that Julian was her one true love. It had taken her all these days to realize that her feelings might have been nothing more than an obsession with a youthful dream. She couldn't lose her Leo, their Leo, and their child, over a fantasy of what might have been. But David didn't agree to book the flight right away. After a long pause on the other end of the line, he said, "Amelia, Leo passed away a few days ago. His flight, it crashed." I shot up from my seat on the couch. Amelia's hand began to shake, and all the color drained from her face. Everything she had been ignoring suddenly rushed back to her. The unanswered messages, the news reports that had been circulating repeatedly, one thing after another. If she had just paid a little more attention, she wouldn't be finding out like this, so late. David's voice came from the phone, careful and soft. "Amelia, since when did you know?" Her own voice was a hoarse croak. "Not long?" He paused, then added, "It was the day you told me not to tell you anything more about Leo." I nodded silently. It was true. I could vouch for David on that. Amelia had always been decisive and uncompromising. Once she made a decision, everyone was expected to follow it without question. To David, I was just a footnote in Amelia's life, someone not worth mentioning again. She wouldn't think of me, much less ask about my whereabouts. Why would he risk going against the wishes of Amelia's powerful future husband? Amelia stood frozen, a dark, heavy aura surrounding her. Even from my ghostly position next to her, I could feel that something was terribly wrong. Then, she kicked the coffee table with all her might. My heart, or what was left of it, ached. I had picked that table out myself. It was expensive as hell. She seemed to remember something then, fumbling with her phone to unblock the number Julian had blocked before. She called it back, her fingers trembling as she lit a cigarette from the pack on the table. "Leo, he's dead, isn't he?" There was a moment of silence on the other end. Then a formal voice replied, "Ma'am, my condolences." After the call, Amelia sat alone in the apartment for a long time before finally driving home. She walked in and went straight to Julian, who was wearing a face mask and watching a movie. "You knew, didn't you?" He looked up. "Knew what?" And why did you take so long to get back? Max has been asking where you went. You should go upstairs and check on him." Amelia's lips twisted into a grimace as she advanced on him, her eyes cold and hard. I had never seen her look like this before, and clearly neither had Julian. He actually took a step back, his voice rising. "Seriously, what's wrong with you? Why are you acting so crazy? I'm not like your little substitute, you know. I have a temper, too." Hearing this, Amelia suddenly started to laugh, though she didn't seem to know why, and as she laughed, tears began to stream down her face. "I remember you said he had a terrible temper," she choked out. "That day I slapped him. I thought for sure he would make a scene at our engagement party, but he didn't. It's always the favored ones, the ones who know they are loved, who can act fearless. By then I already knew what my standing was in your heart. How could I have possibly dared to make a scene?" The color drained from Julian's face. "Leo, you found out about him?" "Yes?" He let out a disbelieving scoff. "What? Don't tell me you suddenly realized you were actually in love with him, and only because he's dead?" Amelia pressed her lips together. "Exactly," she said. "The wedding is off. I'm not marrying you." Julian jumped to his feet. "No way! You promised you would marry me. You promised to treat Max as your own son, to be good to us forever. You can't just go back on your word like that." Amelia lowered her gaze, speaking each word with chilling clarity. "If it weren't for you insisting that he stay for our engagement party, he wouldn't have died." Julian froze for a second, then laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "You're blaming me? You're actually blaming me? If you hadn't been holding on to feelings for him, would things have ever gotten to this point? You probably don't even notice it yourself. You call out his name in your sleep. You're always pointing out clothes that he would have liked when we're out shopping. You did fall for him. From my perspective, you're the hypocrite here. You're the one who got him killed. And besides, when I suggested he stay for the party, you were relieved. You wanted to see him more, didn't you?" Amelia listened in silence, her fists clenched at her sides. I stood by, feeling a strange sense of shock. What was all this? It started to rain outside, and thunder rumbled in the distance. Inside, the two of them faced off. From upstairs, we could hear Max's frightened cries of, "Dad, Mom!" Amelia looked up, her eyes bloodshot. She pointed a shaking finger at the door. "Get out," she said. "Leave now." Julian and his son left that night. Watching this dramatic scene unfold, I honestly didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would. It all just seemed absurd. I almost wished that the person in Amelia's heart had always been Julian. Otherwise, it made my death, my entire existence in her life, seem like a laughable tragedy. A love that arrives too late is worthless. After the villa fell silent, Amelia slumped onto the sofa, her gaze empty and unfocused. After a long while, I heard her begin to sob, quietly at first, then with gut-wrenching grief. To be honest, I had never seen her cry before. A long time passed, and I was nearly nodding off from the sheer monotony of it all, when suddenly Amelia got up as if possessed and ran outside into the storm. She started rummaging through the large trash bins by the curb, the pouring rain soaking her completely. In moments she was a complete mess. It was a good thing I was a ghost and couldn't feel the cold or the wetness. "Where is it?" she murmured to herself, her voice desperate. "I was wrong. I shouldn't have thrown it away." Oh. She was looking for the package I had sent her. She searched for the entire night, but didn't find a thing. Finally, she just sat on the wet ground by the front door, looking completely broken. Luckily, this was a neighborhood of private villas, so there was no one around to witness her breakdown. The butler, Samuel, who hadn't been there the night before, was startled when he arrived the next morning. "Ma'am, what's—" Amelia finally looked a bit more like herself. "The things he sent. You threw them out, and now I can't find them." Samuel paused, and his expression changed. "Actually, ma'am, I didn't throw it away." Amelia's eyes lit up with a sliver of hope. "Where is it?" Samuel led her to his room in the staff quarters, with Amelia following closely behind. He sighed. Leo was a good kid. He didn't have a bad bone in his body. Going so far away by himself. Who knows when he'll ever come back? Amelia stopped walking for a second, swallowing hard. "He's not coming back." Samuel didn't catch her meaning, assuming she was just determined to keep me out of her life forever. He shook his head sadly. "Such a shame. He was always asking me what you liked to eat so that he could learn to make it for you. He even told me once that he didn't really like having short hair, but he kept it that way because you liked it. He asked me once if I thought he looked like Julian, if he was just as handsome. The kid was all smiles. I couldn't bring myself to tell him the truth. I just told him he was even a bit more handsome than Julian. He got pretty happy about that." Amelia turned her head to the side, her hand shaking uncontrollably as she fought back a fresh wave of tears. In the end, the box found its way into Amelia's hands. She treated it like a priceless treasure, taking it back to her room and gently brushing off the dirt before carefully cleaning it with a soft cloth. Then, she took a long bath and changed into clean clothes. It might have been the longest shower she had ever taken. Seeing all this, I just felt bored. Once you're dead, you realize how meaningless everything is. When she finally opened the box, her expression slowly stiffened. Inside was the invitation to her engagement party. On the back, I had scrawled a few angry words. "The candy was nasty, I didn't push anyone. Go to hell. Well, comma. I was the one who ended up dead in the end. I guess that's karma for you." Also in the box were the matching rings we had made together all that time ago. She had lost hers long ago, whether by accident or on purpose, I never knew. She rarely wore it. I had found it in the bushes near my old apartment building. Now, along with my own ring, it was back with her. After all, she had paid for them back then, so they were just being returned to their rightful owner. Amelia stared at the contents for a long while before taking off the engagement ring from Julian and slipping on the simple band from the box. After that, she was in a deep depression for a long time. When the news got out about her breaking off the engagement, Julian was hit with a barrage of scandals about being a diva on set and bullying newcomers. His reputation plummeted overnight. This time, Amelia didn't step in to fix it for him. In fact, her orders to her staff were to add fuel to the fire. Women can be terrifying when they want to be. As the days went by, she still didn't seem to think about arranging a funeral for me. The underworld staff member even came back to rush me along. "Maybe I'll talk to someone higher up," he suggested. "Let you tell her what you need to." But that night, because she had been awake for days on end, running on nothing but grief and caffeine, Amelia got into a car crash. On the day she was lying in the hospital, hovering on the edge of consciousness, the sun was shining brightly outside. I stood by the window and suddenly spoke, my voice soft in the quiet room. "Amelia." Her eyelashes trembled. She seemed to want to open her eyes but couldn't. "I don't have any family or friends," I said. "Since we knew each other for a time, could you do one last thing for me? Give me a funeral, make it a good one, and let's not meet again in the next life." After I spoke, the hospital room went silent for a long, long time. Finally, a single, low, raspy word escaped her lips. "Okay,